Okay, so, super general thoughts. I kind of want to... First of all, I'm really hungry. And I want to, like, think. I think overall, like, I quite like the tone, overall, of the story. And I think a lot of parts were done pretty well. Like, quite decent stuff. Like, it was enjoyable most of the way. There's one, indeed, just big... I did see a couple comments on a side eye on this. The biggest problem, like there is kind of a bit of a glaring flaw a little bit in it, which is from essentially the second half. It is kind of the second half after the boss fight. Is just like antagonist or villain like motivation and logic is just so questionable. And then there's also this kind of thing where it's like Ruan Yi ends up just actually getting painted as sort of way more black and white than it originally seems. Like they almost go out of their way to paint Ruan Yi worse for whatever reason. As if they were like somehow, I don't know, like scared to leave a more morally ambiguous situation, or this kind of situation because like they very much were trying to like seemingly they were trying to clear up the entire, almost kind of clear up like most of the Qingbo Wuling scuffle and schism as well, like actually trying to repair it already rather than letting it breathe a little bit more. And obviously, because you do them, you know, if you're doing them back to back, like this, you also have a kind of a bit of thing where you like have that sort of the entire boss section of one, which I think was really good. Even though there is still already there, you see a bit of cracks in specifically in Ruan Yi's like, I guess motivations and like stuff. But it's like it's vague. It's still vague at that point, and it could from there, you know, you could get reveals and stuff that make it more nuanced. But then the second half doesn't really bring much of that nuance in, or like the what could have been some nuance to it, and ends up rather very much painting as like a Ruan Yi doing his all like fully just vengeance pilled, him going completely off on his own and like throwing everyone else under the bus. Except for Tung Tung, kind of, but like clearly, obviously endangers Tung Tung to an insane degree because of it. Which, like, you know, you can be like a conflicted human like that, where you're like battling against your desire for revenge and like doing things like humans are illogical. Humans do illogical stuff, which is fine. But then I think it's because of how like far they go in painting him as just kind of revenge pilled, that it ends up faltering a lot in like the character motivations. While you could have left it more vague. It feels like they wanted to spell out something when I almost feel like it would have been better to leave it vague on like what his true priorities and stuff were. But of course you can't do that. You can't leave it vague for the readers. Also, you gotta Z4, your message got auto-modded. Give me a second. Give me a second. Your message got auto-modded for kill the chick. Let me read the comments from it. I took it as in becoming black and white as he went. The rune to go further with. They didn't squash Uncle Chunks in at least. They didn't squash everything, but I wouldn't mind us revisiting still like stuff later. But it was a bit, almost felt like they were trying to wrap it up quite a lot. And yeah, it's a very big. It is quite a stark contrast, yeah, to how you meeting up to start. But obviously, I mean, the whole, I guess, you know, kind of the point was that he was hiding everything, right? He was being very two-faced in that way. And there's not like a proper resolution for Qingbo. It's very much like a, hey, it's a work in progress. We still have all these insane people. Like we're not exactly done here yet. So we might indeed still have like more around it. But then you had like kind of these narrative moments of like, oh, Tung Tung proves herself, and they'll fall in line. And of course, Wu Ling can do no wrong. Wu Ling can obviously do no wrong. Yeah, there's even a bit, if you want to put it like a bit decisively or whatever, there's even like, it almost feels like there's like a character assassination of Ruan Yi. Not that we like exactly knew him for very long, so there wasn't that much character to assassinate. But just the sort of, apparently the level of like hatred that he was carrying, it comes a little bit out of nowhere. Still. So he ended up kind of being a plot device for a storyline of like the cycle of hatred and so on. Rather than being at the same time a more real character while also handling, you know, being a device for telling that story. Is it like an initial impression of him is just kind of like, oh, he's probably reasonable. Like, we don't actually know that much about him. So, like, in a way, it's just the fact that, you know, because you also don't know much about him, so then it can kind of come out of nowhere. And there wasn't like any particular specific hint to anything. But they make such a point of him, like, hiding everything. But then, like, maybe they shouldn't. Well, I guess there was still, like, there was some hints. Obviously, there was indeed, like, oh, why are, like, the landbreakers here seemingly mingling with the stockade people? But it's like, oh, specifically Ruan Yi? Fair enough. Oh, I mean, is in a way better that it's still someone that we actually kind of know and not just, like, a nameless whoever, who kind of Uncle Shang is a bit of nameless whoever. He's just introduced suddenly in the second half. We don't hear about him really earlier. And there's even there's some like rehashing stuff. The second half is by far a lot weaker. I feel like everything up until, and even like through the boss fight, I think was actually pretty good. I was quite engaged in all of that. I really liked the tone. The tone was, for example, a lot closer to what you maybe expect out of Arknights. But then it's like the second half where some things fall apart a little bit and like cracks form. And yeah, it was Ruan who let the breakers in. And also, because also, by the way, a whole thing, like, clearly, even the people who are, like, on Ruan Yi's side and whatnot, even many of those were still like, dude, these landbreakers fucking suck. What are we doing with these landbreakers? But then, like, are also still loyal to Ruan Yi, despite he's the motherfucker who brought in the landbreakers. It also understated, yeah, being like, dude, well, I mean, frankly, he probably gave the power. I was like, I mean, if he joins, then cool. If he doesn't, well, whatever. He would have been useful, but we don't require him. Another thing about is being MSQ on our side, so that we remove the whole 2 hours and 30 minutes, just left the last 30 minutes, nothing would change. Different artistry did nothing. And it was, yeah, a decent chunk of the second half was also a bit like, a bit fluff-ish. Like, if you kind of, well, you kind of wanted the, like, confrontation with Qingbo, right? Like, you kind of needed that part for where they wanted to end up. But there's kind of like a bunch of stuff in the middle there a little bit, which is like, or like early on in the second half, which are a bit like, not as needed. But then I guess you have to like somehow transition into Tung Tung was investigating the loyalists. So that we can actually have the confrontation with the loyalists. Yeah, especially the bomb segment felt way more side questy, but then it was like, I guess the. No, yeah, because no, honestly, it does feel like the bomb part pretty much could have been cut out, because we run into the loyalists at the start when we find Tung Tung, we run into the loyalists, right? And you could have just like transitioned from there to then like going to confront the loyalists even without the bit here. So there is like, I mean, I even said it during that there's like a sudden tonal shift specifically for this part, like the part you're running around in Wuling with the bomb or whatever. There is like a sudden tonal shift again. Even though you probably could have just transitioned right into going into the little secret lair that Ruan Yi had and whatnot. But I still have a thingy here. Oh, because I guess whatever, I'll unlock some of these. I have to obviously go grab more. Whatever, what do you want me to do? Fluid mode for the refining. Okay, yeah, you do need that. Cuprium. And the second half is also, like, clearly is also meant to kind of be like a Tung Tung story quest section as well. Because obviously it's like only Endmin, Chen, and Pearlion around. Which is fine. I did like that they did give us a Tung Tung POV, however. They did actually, you know, use a different POV, which is nice. Just gave you a different controlled character and the second half, yeah, the second half is a bit weird. It's a bit, some bits are a bit just disjointed because it's clearly like epilogue stuff for what went on. Then they like kind of, but I was thinking that it maybe like happened in a way like a bit soon. Like, it almost would have been interesting if what they did was... What if what they had done is that... First week, you have main story quest until... the boss fight. And then, like, week 2, once week 2 starts, they would release this part of the story quest, like the second half. So that you'd have actual physical time sort of in between the sections. Yeah, but I don't have a problem with the later part of it, but more so the bomb section does just feel like a little bit more fluff. Didn't really like, other than them showing like, okay, yeah, that the loyalists are up to no good kind of thing. You need Tung Tung Sword to match with the gacha? Yeah, but if you undo it a week later, the Tung Tung banner is still up. And actually, by then, you've also had the entire, like, login, you know, event for Tung Tung. So, you know, whatever. Someone decides to roll on her after that, they also have all the freebie rolls and stuff. He's bringing out the Wu way. Oh, does Wu actually do it? One half on launch day, second half at banner change? Oh, at banner change? Oh, you know, I wasn't thinking banner change. I would thinking, like, yeah, a week later at maybe most, or, like, yeah, like a couple days or something. I was not thinking like a full 3 weeks. Because obviously here, in 3 weeks, when banner changes, we'll have Rossi's character quest instead. So you wouldn't wait until that long. I feel like it would just be paced a bit better. But obviously, I mean, at the same time, you know, it's when you decide to do it on like a whatever, when you make content out of it as well, then you like do it in one go. Normal human being could stop at the sort of first half after the boss fight and come back to it to do the rest tomorrow or something, right? You know, you could just pace yourself. But then I usually just prefer doing stuff like in one go. Oh, see, I mean, yeah, because I was also like, okay, we'll get like a little bit of epilogue, right? After the boss fight. But no, it really does. It goes on for quite a bit. It wouldn't improve the substance of the second half, but a little bit of the, like, just feeling of it. Because there is actual time that has passed between that, but when you're doing it back to back, you don't really kind of internalize it in any actual way. So things happen like they kind of, stuff happens and resolves kind of quickly in a way. Because you're just doing it back to back. Yeah, the other option would be indeed just like promoting to. I mean, they kind of do. They actually, because when you finish the boss fight, you'll get like you get a bunch of notifications that are like, oh hey, you can go do Cuprium ore and stuff now, right? They give you all that, like those little notifications. They're like, hey, you can go do Cuprium ore, you can go do this and that, you can go do some factory, and then, you know, maybe do the second half of the quest or whatever, right? And they actually kind of do encourage you a little bit. They like poke you a bit. But then...
Time for boss to step in.
But then if you're like me, you ignore all of that and just continue with the main story, so... One dinner 3 hours ago, still sitting in the factory. I am also kind of hungry. Because, you know, well, I mean, well... the second half essentially feels a bit rushed in that way. Like they were kind of... It comes out a bit rushed because it feels like they're trying to... They're kind of trying to resolve a bunch of things, but obviously they don't actually, like... That's a long voice line. They sort of resolve some stuff, but not like they don't actually fully resolve. They kind of just set up a resolution, kind of. They don't actually resolve anything fully. And maybe more, almost more so the main part of the more important, like, actual bit is the character bit of Tung coming to terms with the death of Ruanyi. Like, that's obviously actually a big part of it. But then you do so much other stuff in that meantime that they kind of, most of the sort of Tung coming to terms with Ruanyi comes at the end. Rather than, like, more across the big thing. But I guess it's also at the same time, like, her coming into being the chief proper, now that Ruanyi is gone. But I think one of the main things, however, like, I think the biggest problem is just, is ultimately just the Ruanyi and, like, Uncle Shang, the motivations and whatnot of the betrayers, and especially Ruanyi, end up being so questionable and just kind of kind of dumb, for lack of a better word. And some of them just don't really make sense. Even if people don't always make sense, people have to make a little bit more sense in a narrative story, because it's a narrative story. So they can't just be fully dumb as if real people. Real people can be real fucking dumb, because they're real. Your narrative mouthpieces can't be as dumb. And the thing is that those only actually become a problem in the second half. The second half is what causes the cracks. Because up until there's kind of just like it's like a Schrodinger's cracks. There's a possibility of them with Ruanyi and whatnot, but they're not, like, realized yet. And it could have been handled in a way where you wouldn't have the cracks. Like, we could have learned of essentially slightly more gray motivations in the second half and stuff. But we don't, and we actually kind of go the opposite, where indeed Ruanyi just becomes like a fully bad guy. Except for, like, oh, he still kind of cared for Tung, but yeah, Ruanyi just ends up very, very one-dimensional in the end, which is the main problem. Which is unfortunate to see, because I think there was a lot of good stuff in the first half. Right up until the second half starts. All the way until, like, the sort of ending cutscenes for the boss and stuff. I think everything was honestly really good. I really liked it. Second half is just falters quite a bit. And, like, retroactively also makes some of the earlier stuff, like, have some cracks. Yeah, even Arashi is like, hey, bro, you're being dumb. Yeah, even Arashi is like, you're being stupid. And he just kind of ignores it. And yeah, the motivation is for Renge is very petty. Like he knows it's an accident and everything, and, like, he still just goes along with it, which I guess is, you know, kind of supposed to show this, like, human stupidity and the cycle of hate. But the thing is that it would be like, but then I guess if you then make it like, oh, he knows that it's stupid. But I mean, I guess it's kind of maybe supposed to be a bit that he knows that it's stupid, but he still goes along with it. But that maybe isn't portrayed terribly well. Because obviously you get, like, complaint of, like, oh, but why did he go along with it? He seems to understand that he's being stupid about it. Why did he still go along with it? I mean, that could make him like a conflicting character, right? You could make it him a multifaceted, conflicting character. Someone who truly is indeed struggling with the fact that he, as a character flaw, is so focused on this vendetta to the detriment of everyone else around him. Which is kind of like what he is, but it ends up being like it ends up being that, but in a one-dimensional way instead of a more nuanced way. And yeah, bro is stuck in the past and never moved on. Which, by the way, that was just, I thought that was they like using that particular parallel, or like not even it's stuck in the past, it's the more poetic version of Ruan Yi was stuck in the rain of that day. Which is, by the way, almost kind of word for word what Amiya says to Tallulah, where you're still stuck in that fire. Which I was just, oh, haha, point, narrative tool. I enjoyed the second half because retroactively what I learned about Ruan made him as stupid as I believed it to be. No, yeah, I guess that's one way to look at it, yeah. That's one way to look at it. It's like if he like, oh, actually never mind, it's just vindicating my thoughts on the guy. Because they have like little bits where you have like the conflict bit inside Ruan Yi, but it just ends up like not being. There's like kind of like not enough of it, I guess. Because you get to see it in like a couple of quick cutscenes, sort of with some match cuts and so on, like you mentioned. But then, well, it ends up being one-dimensional because it's not explored that well. That's kind of part of it. That's how it ends up being one-dimensional. The thing itself, the actual character setting and conflict is not fundamentally one-dimensional, but if you don't explore it enough or present it good enough, it ends up being one-dimensional. Because we have like fucking zero internal monologue or anything for Ruan Yi, right? Which in a VN we would get to have just as like a narrative function or whatever, but then like in Endfield, where you have kind of more POV characters, it's like, okay, but how would they be hearing his internal dialogue, right? Which is just a thing you have to figure out in this kind of storytelling. It's just a different type of storytelling, so you can't have as much internal dialogue stuff in a presentation like this, which is fair. Thought it would be one-dimensional if you didn't know he was in a way wrong. Yeah, maybe one-dimensional is... It's like... I guess he's two-dimensional rather than one-dimensional. Because he has the two-dimension of wanting the vendetta, but then caring for Tung Tung. But it doesn't get deeper than that. A lot of diary entries. Yeah, we had some... Well, the thing is, we had some diary entries. Every single one of those diary entries, except one of them was like, hey, please take care of Tung Tung. Every single other one of his diary entries we had was him going, I want revenge. So like... like him being just sort of like this super like stubborn, I want revenge, was all the other diary entries. Honestly, loved if we got a POV switch in between where we see Ardashir talking to Ruan Yi while they walk, trying to dissuade him more. Okay, but that would actually... Not even... I love my war from Sarkas, whatever. Okay, but that would have actually been a genuine fucking chance to give Ruan Yi essentially internal dialogue, because the dialogue could be with Ardashir. Ardashir could be like, hey, bro, I'm helping you, but like, you are going down a route of self-destruction and betraying your people. Because we know Ardashir is already a reasonable person like that. Like he is balanced in a way. He was not trying to convince Ruan Yi to just go full-on self-destruction, right? You could have had that exact scene where we could have then had Ruan Yi actually speak to Ardashir and say some of the things out loud so that we would know. Of course, yes, a forte being stubborn is, you know. Also interesting because Ardashir would be arguing the same thing but in service of his own words. Yeah. Like, yeah, okay, genuinely, yes. that one extra dialogue scene of just between indeed Ardashir and Ruan Yi could have done a huge chunk of work for kind of filling some stuff in. And then if you also maybe adjust some of the diary entries and stuff that are in like the second half and whatnot, to make him not seem quite so stupid. But I guess, you know, he was stupid in the end, I guess. So it just could have been more interesting if he wasn't as stupid, you know? I think that's the thing. Like, he's actually kind of, maybe he's actually accurate to what he's supposed to be. Fucking stupid. And, like, stuck in the past, which he is. Maybe they were successful in what they wanted to do, but it feels like it would have been maybe more an interesting conflict if he wasn't as stupid. Bang. Bang, bang. Let the man rest. Of course, like, indeed, I don't think any players will care about Ruan Yi, by the way. I don't actually think they even tried to really make you care about Ruan Yi. It's actually kind of similar to Tata in the way that, like, you don't need to care about Ruan Yi, but you do need to understand that Tang Tang did care about Ruan Yi and got, like, extremely betrayed. I mean, yeah, his plan with revenge was suicidal, and he probably was planning on getting revenge and dying in the process. So yes, you know.
Where should we go next?
Chef actually liked Ruan Yi, but that's why she wanted him to have more development earlier. Not sure what she saw in him. Yeah, and also, yeah, just like taking his people down with him as well. Because it also, there also wasn't like that much of like a, okay, he brings the Landbreakers in, but he's still trying to protect the stockade. There was a bit of that, like, oh, put them in the cages, you know, don't have them fight the Landbreakers, put them in the cages. So in that way, there was kind of that, some of that. Fair. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's a bit of a messy one, but not in like a good, because you can have a messy situation or a messy character in like a good way if they're like conflicting, affectionate. And yeah, that's the thing. It's absolutely like, I didn't go in with like massive expectations. Because I just don't into like any early story. I honestly don't expect us to have like any super amazing story until legitimately 2.0 or something, like the second area. Or third area. But I do think a lot of the tone stuff was a lot better. And there was more like just conflict and like gray tones, especially in the first half for stuff. Even though it is quite a sudden like tone shift from where we sort of leave off in 1.0, right? And yeah, Endmin was decent. Still not like that much. But I guess this was also, however, this patch was very focused on Tang Tang, so it's fair that Endmin didn't have as many, like, moments in that way. Like, there wasn't Endmin development in any way. But this was a Tang Tang patch, so. Oh yeah, and presentation, however, is, like, really fucking good. They have a lot of cool cinematography, like, genuine cinematography. And little cool things that they do in actual presentation. Even if the narrative motivations fall apart a little bit in the second half. Cinematography. And obviously, well, so, I mean, just one thing is, I generally expect somewhat different type of storytelling from Endfield anyway. Like, I'm not expecting Arknights type stories from Endfield in the first place. So, like, in that way, I'm fine if we don't have the same level of just absolute moral quagmire that we have in Arknights often. I don't expect that. And I don't even necessarily want the same type of story in Endfield. Like, if I want Arknights story, I have Arknights for that. Endfield can tell its own story, but also some parts of it have to be a bit more solid. But like it's still like on an upwards. Oh my god, what the fuck? Fuck. It's on an upwards trajectory, like overall still. And we'll see what happens in 1.2 and whatnot. The teases and whatnot we got for on 1.2 might go crazy, so. And there is a bit of it should be better because that's the Arknights name in the title, but it should be better on its own merits rather than just replicating what Arknights did. There are different kinds of good in stories. So and yeah, chapter 16 is next week. So next weekend will actually be Arknights reading. Next weekend will be Arknights reading. I actually don't know how long chapter 16 is, but and yeah, Alexi. Yeah. Different but the same kind of like tightness. Well, except let's be also realistic. Arknights has gone through multiple significant writing improvements over the last 7 years. You know? So and indeed also, by the way, like as you said, I didn't really get invested in AK's main story until the Frost Nova part. Frost Nova part was 6 months into the game, by the way. Chapter 6, Frost Nova chapter, is like 6 months into the game. Of course, however, I do think it is a genuine valid argument, however, that Endfield has slightly less excuses on been going through the same growing pains as Arknights does in certain aspects. Because, well, they've been doing the shit for 7 years already. And I mean, overall, there's still many parts. Because when you think about it, them jumping from Arknights to this quality of game, because let's also remember, the actual, like, game and everything surrounding the story is still mad impressive in most parts, other than, like, oh, lack of endgame. But so much of it is so impressive. And it's more so just like the narrative is like somewhat lagging behind the quality of the rest of the game. And yeah, because in Arknights, even like the first year of stuff. Because like, for example, Dark Knights is first anniversary event. So, and that's when shit gets real. And they did redo Valley 4 a couple times, and it got like marginally better. Not fantastic, which I do think with Valley 4 a big part of it is pacing stuff, because they have so much game to introduce to you in Valley 4. And I think they also they're really just trying to figure out on how to even tell a story in this medium while making the rest of the game. Because it's a very different storytelling device, a game like this compared to a VN. So get to it someday, hopefully. Oh yeah, no, because I'm hopeful. And always kind of have been. I'm willing to give... I'm quite willing to, you know, give time for them to do stuff. And because the thing is, I don't actively, like, hate what I've also gone through. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Valley 4, but there's some good, decent moments in there. And a lot of the... being able to just do a lot of the game stuff distracts you a little bit. Ardelia truly just introduced like whatever. Do you mean a Gibby or the Ardelia Baka? And yeah, Yvonne's quest, Valley 4 quest is also pretty decent, I think. Levitains is quite good. Valley 4 clearly just shows some of their growing pains with Endfield. On getting stuff done. But like overall, I think, and going back to dispatch story, I think overall it's a decent story. It's just the Ruan Yi stuff falls a bit flat, and by extension, kind of some of the Qingbo like schism. Because actually, the schism in Qingbo actually, I think, makes a lot of sense and is like a decent little story to go through. The execution is maybe just not the best, and then you have the Ruan Yi mess in there. And yeah, the team working on Endfield is always different. Well, actually, one thing I'm wondering is if do they bring in, like, did they, transfer some riders possibly from Arknights into Endfield, if they did, like, mostly get newer riders? I feel like that's one of the things you would do, like, some internal shuffling to keep stuff somewhat consistent. Like, they have at least some riders where probably moved from Endfield into, alright, from Arknights into Endfield. Rather AK stories riders staying, they can give me good stories there. This is also fair. I mean, well, they've seemingly have been keeping it, because other than maybe like Hoshiguma Altar event, the stories we've been getting have been pretty good in the last year. Okay, I'm very hungry. I'm a big hunger. I don't think I have any dailies left to do except... Yeah, no, I'll just let the 5 credits go, whatever. I was wondering if I try and clip that as like a thoughts on 1.1 story, or maybe I like do that tomorrow as I organize all my thoughts. So we'll be back here tomorrow. Thank you for coming, thank you for watching, thank you for checking, thank you for lurking. Join the Discord if you want to.